And so Moses comes to a burning bush, and a new journey begins. A journey of conversation between Moses and God that will lead to the Israelites' exodus from Egypt, their formation as the people of God, and eventually their building of both a nation and a temple. But it all starts with Moses standing on holy ground, standing in the presence of a holy God, and embarking on a holy journey. But what made the ground holy was not God as much as it was Moses' encounter with God. All over the Middle East you can find these spots. Sometimes just a pile of rocks, sometimes a mighty temple. Each of them a reminder of someone's sacred encounter with Yahweh, with Allah, with divine light, with God, however you might name that Holy One. That's what makes a church building like this one sacred, holy, or a special place like Walden Pond or Stonehenge or even the Vatican. Not so much that God is in this particular place or in those ones over there, but rather that people, just like you and I, we have encountered God here and in those various sacred places around our world. Our family friend Rick returned from a trip to Italy many, many years ago, and he couldn't get over his experience of Michelangelo's fresco on the top of that Sistine Chapel. Rick is not a religious man. He would be the first to say that. Now, he's a church attender, or at least he used to be. When his kids were little, his wife made him go. And he attended my husband's church on Fox Island, partly because his wife made him, and partly because he liked BJ's intellectual sermons and the choir's beautiful music. But Rick openly dismissed any of the mysteries behind the music and the scriptures that undergirded the sermon until he wandered into that chapel in Rome. Something changed Rick in that space. He came home talking about sacred spaces and the importance of art and architecture in revealing God's presence. It was a little scary. On Sundays, he began sitting where you're sitting and listening to the choir with his eyes closed in reverence, meditating and worshiping as they sang. On sailing trips, Rick talks more easily now about God's presence in creation and listens interestingly when BJ talks about sacred encounters with whales, or our son Michael talks about sacred encounters with turtles. Rick will always be a very intellectual Christian. He likes to think things out. He will always experience God through his mind, through his questions and his ideas. But when Rick encountered the magic and the mystery of Michelangelo's fresco on that ceiling, in that ancient sacred space, Rick experienced and understood God in a whole new way. That holy ground was groundbreaking in Rick's life and journey. And now that space is sacred to me because my friend encountered God there. I'd been to the Vatican, I've been to the Sistine Chapel, and it's never really been a big deal to me. But now I value and treasure that sacred space in a different way because my friend broke new ground in his faith and journey in that space. Similarly, your holy space right here is precious to me because here my friends Dave and Brian found each other. Here they fell in love, and here they consecrated that love in the holy act of marriage as I stood at their side. Here, hundreds of people have discovered that church is a safe and inclusive space, that our thoughts and our ideas about God are just as holy and as welcome as Scripture's thoughts and ideas, and that love and justice are the key values that define this community, that define who you are. Irvine United Congregational Church, you have been groundbreaking for many, many people. You have been groundbreaking for this community, even for this world. Indeed, I'm standing on holy ground. I better take off my shoes. All right, so I'm an inch shorter, but I'm ready to be on holy ground. Your church is the kind of church that my friend Rick yearns for. It's the kind of church that he needs to continue his spiritual journey. And there are hundreds, probably thousands more just like him right in your neighborhood. And so you are breaking ground. Always, every time you open your doors, and now opening the possibility after an enthusiastic capital campaign of opening more doors and bigger spaces to lead to a more welcome environment that will invite and welcome even more people who need this sacred space, who need this unique community as they encounter God and travel on their life journeys. Your leaders and I spent the day yesterday talking about what it means to be groundbreaking, about how you are groundbreaking. Not just because you one day will be breaking more physical ground, but because you are a groundbreaking church who wants to keep breaking new ground on this path you walk with God. And so the story of the Israelites beginning their journey at a burning bush in a small spot deemed holy seemed right for today. This scripture pulled to me. So I opened up my Bible, I kept reading this scripture, but I gotta tell you, I couldn't quite find the wisdom it offered. Now, I was a major in Hebrew scriptures, so I got out my Hebrew translation, I read some of it in Hebrew. I picked up the commentaries, that's what my seminary professors always said to do when I'm preparing a sermon. I reread the scripture, and still, I found myself scratching my head. I needed inspiration, so I went where I go, which was to the beach. And I walked, and I listened, and I watched those waves, and still, nothing was coming together. But then, an artist solved it for me. Just like Michelangelo did for my friend Rick on that trip to Rome. And so I offer you a few short measures from Leonard Bernstein. Will you build me a house that really will be mine? Then let me give you my design, a simple scheme of the house I dream of. Build my house of wood, build my house of stone, build my house of brick and mortar. Make the ceiling strong, strong against the storm. Shelter when the days grow shorter. But build my house of love and paint my house with trusting and warm it with the warmth of God. Make the floor of faith You see, you've built your house with love all these years. That's what makes this space and every part of your church grounds sacred. And so I say to you, build your new house with love. Build an expanded house with even more love. It's what you've been doing since you began ministry here some 37 years ago. For almost 4 decades, you've been breaking ground in your little corner of the world, breaking ground with love. Most recently, adding creation justice in the form of green faith to your already faithful commitments to just peace, to global mission, to open and affirming, to being a progressive Christian community. Groundbreaking is who you are, but it's the holiness of your groundbreaking that makes all the difference. There are a lot of good justice organizations in the world. There are a lot of good churches in the world. There are a lot of good leaders in the world trying to do good things in the world. Your own Ken Wyant is serving at the Democratic National Convention, helping our nation to move forward in its presidential election process. That's important work. But your work inspires me more. Because here, you know that no matter how amazing your work and your dreams might be, no matter how big and beautiful your buildings or how big and beautiful a building expansion might become, it is all for naught if you lose sight of the underlying value, the foundation that makes both you and this space holy. The foundation of love. Because of love, people encounter God here. It's the love that makes this holy ground and makes you a holy people. Love that is expressed in your passion for peace and justice. Love that is expressed as you seek health and wholeness for all of God's creation. Love that is expressed in your commitment to global mission. Love that is expressed in your open minds and conversations that welcome debate and doubt, that encourage intellectual input and discerning questions. Love that is expressed in your open and affirming inclusion and your insistence that every person in this world be openly included and welcomed. Oh, this is the love that makes your space and each of you holy ground. This is the love that makes it worth expanding your holy ground to welcome even more people in study and fellowship. This is the love that will grow as you deepen your own thinking and spiritual growth. And this is the love that keeps us from sounding like a noisy gong or clanging cymbals. We live in a world where there are plenty of clanging cymbals and noisy gongs. Can we get an amen there? But into this world, these words come down to us from the ancient words to the First Corinthian church, reminding us to create beautiful music rather than clanging cymbals. To focus our hope on a holy dream. A dream that you and I can be holy groundbreakers. Leaders of love and justice, changing our little corner of the world. So that as our corner touches someone else's corner, that love and that justice spreads to yet another corner. And that as each corner touches another one, love and justice begins to spread throughout the world. Oh, may you and I become songs of love in our doing and in our being, in our words and in our actions, creating sacred spaces of justice and peace that display God's beautiful truth of inclusion and offer an inspiring hope for all the world to know. Together, let us be holy groundbreakers so that we can build a house of love, build a house of faith, build a house of peace, build a house of hope, build a house that is indeed holy ground. May it be so.